Welcome to Care, Share and Inspire, our live studio from Dubai, from the climate conference in UAE. We bring together experts from science, politics and spirituality to explore new avenues for the unfolding climate disaster. Myself, I'm Golo Pilz. I'm the advisor on renewable energies to the Brahma Kumaris, and I will be tonight's moderator. Yesterday, after the opening, the climate conference agreed for the first time for the funds on loss and damage. And it was a bit of a breakthrough to help the world poorest compensate for the damage caused by climate change. However, the yearly damage in climate change, through climate change, is estimated to be 400 billion US dollar, and the funds will have approximately 100 billion US dollar if the money comes all together. So somehow it's probably cheaper to avoid the carbon emissions at all than to pay for the damage it is causing. So we have to see how it is going on. Today also King Charles gave a very emotional appeal to the world leaders, and it's quite worthwhile seeing this speech on YouTube. It was very nice, very emotional. He put all the points inside. However, again, these were nice words. In addition, also yesterday evening, a small group of Brahma Kumaris members could meet to Prime Minister Narendra Modi on his arrival in Dubai. So lots of things are going on here at the COP conference, and we will keep you updated on the news. I'm very glad to have three esteemed speakers with me tonight. Next to me is Elena Cedillo, and she's the Program Director for Climate Justice of the Lutheran World Federation. She works on the promotion of implementation of innovative climate change projects and promotes advocacy on climate change projects in various UN bodies. She's organizing and leading the Lutheran delegation to the COP28. She has also published various research papers. Welcome very much to our panel. I also like to welcome our special guest today, Alan Otaro, and he's the founder and executive director of the Catholic Youth Network for Environmental Sustainability in Africa, based in Nairobi in Kenya. Alan is also a founding member of the Global Membership Council of the Laudatio Si movement. He's passionate about engaging young people and faith communities in promoting environmental sustainability with a strong social justice perspective. And last not least, I would like to welcome Sister Jayanti Kriplani. She's the additional administrative head of the Brahma Kumaris, a spiritual organization with more than 5,000 meditation centers in India and 600 abroad. The Brahma Kumaris is accredited to the UNFCCC process since 2009, and Sister Jayanti has been to almost all the climate conferences since then. And she's also the main representative to the UN. So without further ado, I would like to engage in our discussion, and I've prepared a couple of interesting questions, and I would like to start with you, Elena. You have been several times to the climate conference, and let me ask a very personal question to you. What motivates you and what drives you to come to these huge and busy climate conferences? Also, please share briefly what action has to be taken to curb climate change, and what do you expect as an outcome from this climate conference?
Thank you so much, Golo, for inviting me and also for this question. I think when you ask me about motivation, I am a faith person, and the first thing that motivates me is to help people in need, because I really saw, for example, in Central America, how people is suffering because of the impacts of climate change. You know, in the dry corridor, the extreme weather events. So it's really painful to see people suffering in that way. On the other side, I also think that we can bring something to the table as a faith-based organization. We have some experience. We are the communities in need. On the other side, we also can bring hope. No, it's something that motivates very much, and I think also this empathy and solidarity with the others. So many things for me. It's difficult to explain only in one word, but there are many aspects that motivate me to advocate for climate justice. No? On the other side, when you ask me about what actions has to be taken to curb the climate change and what I expect as an outcome, well, it's a really big question, a really important question, and I think that one step that the governments took today is to establish the fund for loss and damage. And now we really need to have funds there, fresh money, no? So we said fresh money because sometimes we are thinking that they will solve the problem to shifting money from one pocket to another, no? And we said, and we advocate for additional funds to really help people suffering the effect of losses and damages. On the other side, there are many other tracks that the governments will negotiate during these 2 weeks, the global stocktake. So I also would like to see how the governments will commit, no, to really achieve the Paris Agreement goal, no, to keep below 1.5 Celsius degrees, because we are now living in a world where climate change affects everybody, especially the people in needs. So I think I will stop here to continue then the conversation.
Yeah, great. Your answers are very deep, and indeed, it seems money is there, but sometimes it's going in the wrong directions. So we'll have to see that the Loss and Damage Fund will be picking up nicely and everybody will contribute. I heard that my country is Germany. I heard that Germany was the first and UAE to donate money to that fund. So it actually became possible. They initiated the seed money for the funds. Wonderful for your answer. And this brings me to Ellen. Ellen, what's your passion? You're quite young, but you seems to be passion driven. And what's your motivation to come all the way to this climate conference? And how does it relate to your work you're doing in Africa?
Thank you, Golo, and thanks for the invitation to be here. As a young person from Africa, I feel this is an important part of my mission as a young person, primarily because Africa is one of the continents that's hardest hit by the effects of the climate crisis, but also that's causing the least in terms of the accountability for the problem, in terms of the emissions. So there's an issue of climate justice there, which is very, very important. But in terms of representation at these intergovernmental meetings, if you look at the numbers in terms of people who participate, Africa is generally underrepresented. And even within the African delegations, the number of young people present in those delegations is also very small. And therefore, as a young person who is part of an organization that has the opportunity to participate at this level, I feel that it is significant and important that I be here so that I can, in whatever way possible, represent the voices of my other colleagues who cannot be here for various variety of reasons. But it's also very key that I am here with my colleagues because we are then able to put the world leaders and other policymakers on notice that we are watching you, we are watching the commitments you are making, and we'll be back at our communities to hold you to account to ensure that those commitments you've made at the international level are also implemented when, as the UNFCCC Secretary said, when the cameras have gone, that you continue to implement those commitments that you've made at the global stage in front of all the cameras and all the media. So that's part of our task, and that's part of what drives me to connect the dots between what's happening at the global level and what's happening at the grassroots.
Wonderful. It's very interesting, accountability. And yeah, indeed, we have to see what is going on when the cameras are being switched off. Mr. Genti, many companies and organizations, even countries, suddenly go green. Products get an eco label or they become renamed natural. I've even seen natural petroleum already, and so on. And a new word has been coined. It's called greenwashing. And show on the outside that you're sustainable, but you do whatever you want to do and you do business as usual. So it's a very big issue right now. A lot of greenwashing is going on, and many promises are done by quite interesting companies or organizations where you never would thought that they will go in the environmental area. However, in the world of spirituality, we undergo also a washing process, but it is related to the cleansing, or let me say, to the purification of the soul, of the self. And there is a rather subtle connection between the soul or the inner state of our mind and the outer world and what is going on outside there. And can you share a bit your insights about this purification process and also how the inside is connected to the outside?
Thank you, Golo. It's a big, big question, but it's actually at the heart of the whole crisis today. Because if we look at the state of the human mind now, then we see that so often there's either negativity or there's a lot of waste, or maybe it's just ordinary. But only rarely are there pure, noble, innovative, creative thinking. And so when the state of our mind is muddled and confused and filled with negativity, then of course the behavior that we have is the same, and the actions that we perform and have an impact on everything around us is also of the same caliber. And so human beings have made all sorts of decisions that are not in keeping with the natural laws of the universe. And so we've exploited nature, we've damaged nature, we've hurt it, we've taken and extracted everything from it. And we've created a state of total imbalance and chaos in nature also. So that's what we're seeing in the world currently. Inside out is the term that we use. Whatever is going on inside can be seen visibly outside. You know, there's a very simple example, and I'm tempted to share it. If there's a boat is meant to be in the water, but the water isn't meant to come into the boat. But once the water starts coming into the boat, there's a problem. Same thing, I'm here in this world, and I'm responsible for the inner state of being I carry within myself. The world is out there, and I mustn't allow the things that are going on outside to penetrate inside, but rather, when I'm connected with the inner being, then I should allow the peace, the purity, the love to reach out. So that's not happening. And I think that it's time that we realize that this is the issue and brought about change, so that then we make our inner being powerful through silence, through meditation, and so on. And then we're able to start making the right decisions to take the world in the right direction.
Right? And basically we can say what happens outside in the world is a reflection of what happens on the inside. Quite interesting concept, and holds a lot of truth inside. Elena, you are the program executive for the Lutheran World Federation for Climate Justice. Can you give us a short overview on your activities? And what are the major areas and projects the Lutheran Church is taking up in order to reduce also your carbon footprint as an organization? Please share with us.
Thank you so much, Golo, for this question. And I can share first that in terms of what we are doing, so we are doing advocacy at the different UN bodies. So we are targeting the Human Rights Council, specifically the work of the Special Rapporteur on Climate Change and Human Rights, these linkages between these two topics. We are also targeting the UNEP, United Nations Environmental Program, and we are focusing on following all the process to develop a legally binding treaty on plastic pollution, because plastic pollution is also a big problem in all of our countries. The next one is the UNFCCC. So we are following the COP. We are trying to influence the COP at the global level. But also for us, it is important that everything that you decide at a global level needs to be implemented at the national level, as our colleague said. So we really need to see changes at the local level, at the community level. So we are trying to advocate with evidence-based. at the local community, at the national level, we are supporting young people leading climate justice initiative. So they are advocating towards the local governments. They are doing campaigns, cleaning campaigns. They are doing tree planting. They are creating materials to raise awareness about climate change and climate impacts. So we are supporting them in that way. And there are different levels of our work regarding to capacity building. So I think it is important to support the church in a way that the church can advocate to the government, no? Because sometimes when we are participating at the COP, so we can understand the language, because the UNFCCC language is really special for us, no? So, and if we need to share our thoughts, so we really need to speak in the way that governments can understand us. But the unique aspect of faith-based organization is rooted in our theology, no? In our care for creation. So in a nutshell, this is what we are doing, or I am doing as a climate advocate in LWF. And when you asked me about the major areas and projects, so about reducing our carbon emission, we took the decision in 2015 to not invest on fossil fuels. And also, we took a decision to reduce our carbon emission towards 2050. But during this assembly, we had a new resolution from the assembly. So, and the resolution on climate emergency. And we took the decision to accelerate the process to becoming carbon neutral by 2030. So it's a huge task in our work. So, and also we need to work across all of our member churches, no, that are in different countries and face different realities. But at the first time, what we are doing is, of course, compensate our travel. Sometimes we cannot avoid traveling, but we really need to compensate our travel. So we have a fund to compensate all of our travels, and then we invest this fund on tree planting or promoting advocacy at the local level with our member churches and other stakeholders. On the other side, we implement so we change our procurement process. So because we also need to work with others that are committed to take care of creation. So I will stop there because I think we can discuss more.
These are really great news, and this is a major step to become carbon neutral until 2030. And it would be lovely if everybody is trying to attempt this, because then we would have much less problems and we would have a clear roadmap also, because not that much time until 2030. No. Is another 6 years basically. Yeah. Congratulations to take that step. Alan, your work is rooted in the Catholic social teachings and on the care for the creation. And I think when Pope John Paul gave the message in 1990 to the World Day of Peace, you got inspired to set up the Catholic Youth Network in Africa. Can you share with us about the concept of Catholic social teachings on the care for creation and how this translates into action, practical action on the ground?
Thanks, Golo. Yeah, that's a very broad question, actually. But just to kind of highlight, Catholic social teaching is really about how we as human beings relate with all of society, our relationships, our interactions. But for a long time, it was limited, or at least in a lot of people's minds, it was limited to the interaction between just people and the rest of society, without thinking about all of creation. Although the church was teaching about this, it was not, much highlighted until probably 2015, when Pope Francis wrote Laudato Si, the encyclical letter Laudato Si, Care for a Common Home. But if you read Laudato Si, he's making reference also to his predecessor. So he's making reference to Pope Benedict XVI, John Paul II, and those who came before him, about our need to relate as we relate with each other, that also we build relations with all of creation, because we are part of creation. We are not apart from it. We're not the lords or masters of creation, and therefore we need to strengthen and that if any of this relationship is broken, that's then when we have problems such as we are now in terms of the crisis. And so in a practical level, we have, number one, to ensure that people are well informed about this teaching. That with one of the things we found out at SINESA organization is that a lot of people, not just young people, but a lot of Catholics are not even aware that there is something called Catholic social teaching. And so what we do at SINESA is, number one, what we call formation, which is about helping people translate the information or knowledge that they gather from their heads to connect it with their hearts, and therefore eventually translate into action with their hands and their feet. Go out and actually implement and live in a concrete way their faith principles about caring for creation. The second thing we do is about networking advocacy. So how do we connect young people from different parts, country of the continent of Africa, to build one common approach towards solving the ecological crisis that we face? Because we share a lot of these resources. They're transboundary. So if you think of the different ecosystems that we have in the world, in Africa, at the national level, they're transboundary. So from one province to another, from one country to another, they're shared. So if one country is doing something to take care of its ecosystems, but the next country, the neighboring, is not, you still have a problem, because it's all connected. And Francis says everything is connected in terms of the ecosystem, but also of all the relationships that we have. And then the third element is about supporting grassroots action for young people on environmental action. So this is, as Elena said, also what they do at the Lutheran World Federation, translating the policies into action. Things like tree growing. How do we support young people in their parishes, in their dioceses, to take action with others also? Because as we are young Catholics, but we are living with other people, right? We're living with people of other faiths. We're living with people of other civil society organizations. So how do we build collaboration across these different motivations that bring us towards solving this issue? And the totality of this is that we are looking towards building, shaping what we call ecological citizenship, so that it's a young person who is well holistically formed, understands his or her responsibility towards others, but also towards all of creation, and to create that harmony, that opportunity for us on the African continent, but also beyond, to contribute towards addressing the ecological crisis. Even though, as I mentioned earlier in my opening remarks, Africa is responsible least for the emissions, but is suffering the most. But that does not mean that we do not have a contribution towards addressing this.
I like very much what you said, from your mind, heart, and hands. Very nice examples, a very nice flow. A lot of the information is quite intellectual, sometimes very difficult to understand the people on the ground. And it's definitely one of the jobs also, what you mentioned, to translate complicated language in the COP here, or the complicated language of science or of research, into practical work on the ground. And to have the heart in between is a very, very wonderful example. Congratulations. Mr. Jayanti, there is an urgency for everybody to reduce the carbon footprint. We heard it. And the Brahma Kumaris is also a global organization with many followers. And in our environmental initiative, we have also a plastic-free campaign, trying to teach people to avoid plastic as good as possible. We have also a carbon offset mechanism, And but we also have introduced 25 years ago a very ambitious renewable energy program for many of our centers in India, and also started then later a project about yogic farming, and lastly initiated also a tree plantation campaign in Help Taru. Can you share a bit more background and outreach of these programs for our audience?
Surely. It was in the 1980s when I believe you yourself, Golo, became an instrument to actually design and build the first solar cooker system that we still use in Mount Abu. And then I know when the hospital came along, you were an instrument to sort things out for the solar system there. And then at some point, we had a solar cooking range, which was the largest in the world. It was reported by the BBC at that time. And the policy of the Brahma Kumaris is that knowledge should be shared freely and made available to all. And so you went across to South India to teach other ashrams the same story. And in fact, another ashram now has the largest solar cooking range in the world, which is great. And from there, you went on with a group of people to actually do a lot of research and development in the whole subject of solar thermal power station. And so India One is an example of that. And so it provides us with electricity 24 hours. So when we need it the most during the night, it's there available. And it's quite a stunning sight to see because it's like a huge field and it looks a little bit like the moonscape. It's very dramatic, and you must both come and see it one day. So that's been happening. And I see that not just within our headquarters, these are examples there, but there's also been a very great interest and demand from all our centers across India, about 5,000 of them, to have solar lanterns, solar cooking ranges. And so they've also been understanding the value of all of this. India is blessed to have sunshine for maybe 9 months of the year. Now with climate change, let's see what changes. But generally, that's been the case. So it's provided a huge amount of renewable energy for all our activities. The second thing that you mentioned was yogic agriculture. Everybody's aware of organic agriculture and the benefits of that. But also with yogic agriculture, there was a farmer actually in Maharashtra who came up with this idea that his family were following Raj Yoga, meditation. And so they started to follow an ancient practice, which was to have meditation, pray before everything that was being done. And so when the seeds came, they would pray, meditate on the seeds. When they would till the soil, the same thing. When it was time to plant the seeds, again, meditation. And through the whole process of germination, again, there was meditation going on every day. And it's a fact that vibrations impact everything. And so the yogic vibrations have impacted. And there's been 4 universities that have studied all of this and have seen that the results are truly positive and beneficial for the microbes in the soil. So the quality of soil improves, the nutritional value of the plant and the product. So we are now planning a whole scheme to have 70 different farms all over India that are going to have practice so that every area can have access to training and the practice of all of this. The last thing that you mentioned, Gola, was Kalparu. And this was an initiative by young people. And of course, then it reached out to everybody. We've always been interested in planting trees for a long, long time. But this was a very specific program in which everybody was supported with an app. And I think that they were given instructions on what sort of plant would be the best, how to be able to sustain it and maintain it. And that's worked beautifully. So you've had about 2 million trees planted within the last couple of years, just within the last couple of years. So we've always been interested in the fact that it's not just silence and meditation that's important, but it's important also to actually do something on practical level. And so all these are examples of practical projects that have been undertaken.
Great news, and I'm glad that you mentioned all these activities hands-on, and that the organization also shares all these findings with other people and has done many workshops and interaction with local farmers and so on to really replicate it and bring it into society. Elena, as a person of faith, we are called to live in a harmonious relation with creation. But somehow it seems that humans have a bit lost the path. And we also seem to have lost the connection to the divine. Not everybody, but majority of people is not considering much their actions in connection with the divine. And in climate change, we have currently crossed several tipping points or are close to several tipping points. And humanity by itself will have difficulties to remedy that crisis. It's also a huge crisis in its proportions. We have never faced such a crisis of that scale. As a person of faith, can you imagine an intervention from above, help from the divine? Please share with us what you feel, what is in the pipeline.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for this question. I would like to refer what Sister Yenti says. So when people meditate, after doing agriculture practices, so this interconnectedness and recognize the interdependence with all creatures, I think this is something that we really need to be aware of. And I really hope that all people that are negotiating here at COP recognize that we need, everybody needs the other, right? So, and we are in this connection, and we really need to reconnect sometimes with the earth, with the animals, with all creatures. So I really feel that we need to be to recognize again this, and maybe after that we can really find the solution, because we are also thinking about the other in need, and then solidarity comes, right? So I as a people of faith, I always have hope, because if we don't have hope, so if we lose hope, so nothing can happen. And I know that sometimes at the climate negotiation we only see the many problems, and sometimes we feel overwhelmed for all these situations. But we also bring hope to this these dialogues. Today we had some events, and we discussed many activities that faith-based organizations have, and many good examples, and many things that we can scale up and replicate. So I hope we continue having this hope during this COP.
That's a lovely news which you are sharing. I just recently read about climate positive. That you see climate positive and you see what is all going on also as a chance for humanity to grow and to transform. And definitely hope is very important. My brother is a doctor, and the first thing when the patient comes, he gives him hope, and he said that's half of the medicine. Yeah, very nice. Alan, coming back to you. Yesterday, the conference agreed on the Loss and Damage Fund, which was a bit of a breakthrough. And this is one step, but apparently much more has to be done in this direction. And it's also not yet 100% clear where all the money will come from. But it also seems that the countries are not yet really ready to phase out fossil fuels at a pace and at a speed which is really required. As far as I understand, we have to stay within the 1.5 centigrade degree. We have another 6 years or so, then the carbon budget will be exhausted. And if you listen to the talks here, nobody's really prepared to phase out fossil fuels in such a short time phase. And what action has to be taken by the COP, especially from a perspective of young people? And second part of the question is, can the COP mechanism by itself actually deliver what is needed? Some people say the role of the COP might be over and we need some new mechanism. Or do we need a solution totally outside of the box? Please share your ideas.
Thanks, Golo. This is a very challenging area because the issue of loss and damage, of course, was one of the most controversial areas in the last few years in terms of the negotiations at the COP. But I think at this stage, any win that comes in this process in terms of the structure of the multilateralism at the UN level, any win that comes, you have to seize that moment and take that momentum and move with that towards other issues that are also challenging in terms of the negotiation process. So even though there's still the disappointment around the issue of phasing out fossil fuels, I think, as you mentioned earlier, climate positive, this positive sign that has come out, particularly from the first day of the COP, is perhaps a good sign of the process as it evolves. But this is connected also for me hand in hand with the second question that you asked, because I think they're both connected from the perspective of a young person. I feel that, and Pope Francis puts this very interestingly in his second document called Laudate Deum on the climate crisis, which he released on October 4th, where he analyzes the weaknesses of the international multilateral system. But he also reminds us that this is, it's the only system that we have, it's the only process that we have. And therefore, rather than attacking this system, let's look for ways of making it work for all of humanity. Let us look for ways for it to work for all of creation, because this is what we rely on, even though we can recognize the urgency. You mentioned we only have this six-year window only. And I think it also goes hand in hand with the issue of just transition, because I feel that you have to carry the communities along with you, help them to realize what is happening in terms of the urgency of the climate crisis, because they are suffering from the effects. As we speak right now, there are many communities in Kenya who have been lost their livelihoods, their lives from the flooding that we. And the year before, it was from the drought. So when you speak to somebody about fossil fuel transition, particularly for communities that whose jobs and whose livelihoods and other things are connected to this socioeconomic model that we've been riding on for the last century or so, we need to be also talking about the alternatives and showing that the alternatives are working. That as we transition from fossil fuels, what are we transitioning to? Renewables. And Sister Janti and yourself, Golo, you have got this very concrete experience of what you've done practically. So my feeling is that we need to be telling more about the stories of the renewables that are already working for community, with community, the many benefits that communities are deriving from the renewable sector in terms of green jobs, particularly for young people, and particularly from a continent in Africa, which is the youngest in terms of population. Up to like 70% of Africa's population is below the age of 30. And every African country is grappling with youth unemployment. So there are multiple wins towards phasing out fossil fuels. But I think the messaging needs to be done right, so that there is the positive element coming out of it with a good balance of the urgency of the climate crisis that we're facing. My feeling is that if we do this both together and we strike a good balance, then it might have an effect on the leadership, on the leaders at the global level, and it might then be easier for them to strike an agreement around phasing out of fossil fuels.
That's a great statement which you gave. And just as a little news, meanwhile, renewable energy is cheaper than fossil fuel. And prices of photovoltaic has fallen so much, it's just there. You just can install it. That's a really good news. You just need the sunshine, which is more than abundant in most of the places of the world. Mr. Genti, as a yogi practitioner, you meditate since many, many years, more than 50, 55, 60, maybe. And yoga means connection with the divine. It's a very deep process for a person to connect with the divine source. And it is said it has a very profound and uplifting effect. And it is said regular meditation builds up inner strength, resilience, and also gives hope. These are all the things which we need, which we were spoken about: hope, inner strength, resilience, clear mind. Can you elaborate a little bit on the process of meditation and how it helps you and how it changes you?
How much time do we have, Golo?
3 minutes, as everybody.
Okay, so just as a summary, in Raj Yoga meditation, yoga means union, connection. So it's actually talking about the connection of the individual being, the soul, with the divine. And the method that we use is to be able to train our mind to move in a positive, elevated direction. We are not stopping thoughts, so it's a very natural way to meditate. And within that, when I come to the awareness of the inner being, the soul, there's a huge change that happens. I'm able to connect with the inner qualities, the treasures that I carry within myself, the peace, the love, the truth, the joy, the purity. But I'm also able to see others with that same vision, that each and every soul is my brother, and I'm part of this world family. my vision towards myself becomes one of self-esteem. And I see that dignity is such an important aspect of everything that we do. But that comes when I can value myself and respect myself. Then I have a dignity that nobody can take away. But also I don't want anybody else to put me on a pedestal, because my own inequalities give me that dignity. But when I have self-respect, I see other people with that view, but I also see all other creatures, all animal species, also with respect. But I also see the elements of nature, the earth, the air, the sky, the water, the sky, the clouds, whatever it is. I see that it's part of that interconnectedness, which is the web of life. And so it changes my whole attitude. If I hurt one part of my whole body feels pain. It's not just isolated to that finger, but the whole body is in a state of shock. But equally, if I do any act of violence against a creature or against any part of nature, I'm hurting the whole planet and I'm creating imbalance within the whole system. And so meditation teaches me how to be able to balance myself, understand the relationship between mind and body, and how a powerful, pure mind can keep the body in healthy condition, but equally a powerful, pure mind can restore balance to nature also. And so there's benefit on all levels, personally, interpersonal, but also to the rest of life and the creation that is such a beautiful creation that has looked after us with such care for millennia. And we've destroyed our home, and it's now time to repair it. And it has to be now. We can't postpone it or delay it any longer.
Wonderful insight. And this reminds me, when you meditate regular, you understand the web of life, and everything is interconnected. Then you take the right decision and the right choices. This brings us now slowly to the end of our panel discussion, and we just maybe have enough time to collect from everybody one good wish for the COP. One word.
One word. So, commitment.
Commitment, very nice. Sister Jayanti, what is your wish for the COP?
People accepting responsibility.
Commitment, responsibility, and Alan?
For the COP, urgency.
Urgency, commitment, yes. Responsibility. Oh, nice. A wonderful collection of words, and let us memorize them. And I like Sister Jayanti to speak for 2 minutes, a meditation for all of us to really experience this connection to the web of life. Sister Jayanti, please.
I go on an inner journey, and in this awareness, I realize that within this physical body, I am actually the energy that's making everything happen within the body. And this energy that I am is a being of light, located in the center of the forehead. I become aware of this. I accept this, that I, the living being, soul, am separate to this physical body. And in this awareness of who I am, I can actually share peace, light with my own physical form, but also I can share these qualities at all times with everyone I come into connection with. And in silence, on this inner journey, I recognize not only does peace lie within, the truth, love, joy are also within the inner being that I am. holding this awareness, sending out these vibrations of the qualities of the divine to all directions. Come back to the role I play here, but now with a different perspective and awareness. Om Shanti. Thank you.
Thank you, Sister Genti, for guiding us in meditation, and a special thanks to Elena and to Ellen to come to our panel discussion. Time is ticking, and we're almost coming to the end. And I'd like to mention also our sponsors, Brahma Kumaris, the Kalptaru Tree Plantation Project, Brahma Kumaris Environment Initiative, Yogis for Future, Radio Madhuban, and India Care Trust. And special thanks also to our hosts, the Raja Yoga Center here in Dubai, and the many, many helpers behind the camera, which have working tireless since the last 2 or 3 weeks to make all this happening and possible. Please do join us tomorrow for another session of Care, Share and Inspire. And for details, you can visit our webpage at www.echo.brahmakumaris.org. And last not least, thanks very much to you, our audience, to staying all the time with us. Thank you very much, and good evening from Dubai.